I don't know. We got a few people here. Do you have questions? You have questions. I hope you have questions. Okay, so that's recording over there. So if you're new to all this, basically this is the tech question and answer session for Silicon Dojo. Silicon Dojo is authorityless, gatekeeperless, free to end user hands-on technology education that empowers you to do whatever the hell it is that you want to do. Basically, the idea is, hey, what if we did a technology education system that was open for anybody to learn? So we have these Zoom sessions. Sometimes we do classes, sometimes we do question and answer. We have recordings of old classes and Zoom sessions. We have self-study programs. So we have Python here. We have something called Bottle Web App Framework. And we have SQL, Structured Query Language. So these are the self-study programs that are available. And then we do tech office hour, coaching office hours. Mondays, 1 through 5, I give you 30 minutes, and we discuss your problems. I listen to you, and then I try to give you solutions based off of what you said, and I think that might actually be helpful for you. Again, do remember, Silicon Dojo is free to the end user. We do have this little donor box thing. Basically what that means is we're crowdfunded. We have no sponsors. YouTube doesn't pay me very much anymore, so crowdfunding really helps. If you find these classes or the things that I do valuable, and you have money, click on that link. That will take you to Donor Box, and you can dump in some dollars. $5 a month, $10 a month. That would be absolutely lovely. Anyways, that is what is going on. So I had something come up recently with one of the students, again, doing the coaching sessions or whatever. One of the things that came up with the whole conversation, I got a little, I don't know, it was a nastygram, a testygram from this person. And it came in this whole thing about why should students trust me, and that this person needed to know that the people that he dealt with cared about him. And I thought this was an interesting thing to bring up. So the person brought up an issue. I solved the issue. The issue was this long. The email was this long. Anyways, and what I thought was interesting about this is this whole question about why should you trust me? And I do want all the students, everybody listening, to grasp why you should trust me. And the fact of the matter is you should not trust me. Do not trust me. Do not trust anybody. Distrust, verify, stay suspicious. Again, you do not know what's going through my head. The difference between me and con artists is I tell you that fact. Anyways, there's no con here. Again, my wife would be much happier if this was a con. If I was conning you somehow, my wife would be happier. Nobody really understands what I'm doing. The point that I make here, though, is that whenever you're learning from anybody, whenever you're interacting with anybody, don't just inherently trust them for any reason. Again, with me teaching you folks, I am giving you information. Now, for me, I know I'm giving you the best information that I can. But you don't know, right? So you need to take what you've learned from other people. You need to take what you learned from me. You then need to correlate that to things that you find in the real world. Go to meetups, go to events, talk to people. Say, hey, this guy, Eli the computer guy, said, blah. What do you think about that? And then from all of that, you do not trust me. Never trust me. Trust your understanding of whatever it is that you're trying to learn about. Very important thing. This whole thing, trust, that's garbage. It's trash. Gen Zers are going to get that crap beat out of them at some point. But don't. The other thing, too, is this whole, caring about folks. I do want everybody to understand I care about moving balls down the field. I used to have a corgi named Tex. And Tex just loved to nose balls down the field. That's what he did all day, all night. And that's what I do. I care about balls. I push my ball down the field, and I will help you push your ball down the field. That's not necessarily the same thing as caring about you. Again, I know it seems like it's splitting things or whatever, but it is important to understand. So Silicon Dojo, we have over 640. We have 640 members of Silicon Dojo right now. And we've only been around for a month and a half. Silicon Dojo, as this has only been around for a month and a half or whatever. We already have 640. I can't care about all of you. I just fucking can't. I can teach you. I can provide you resources. If you sign up for a class, I can listen to you, or sign up for a session, I can listen to. But that's not the same thing as caring about you. And again, it's one of those things just to consider. So anyways, if you're willing to accept that, cool. If you're not willing to accept that, also cool. I'm just doing what I'm doing. So yeah, just something to think about. If you do have any problems, again, if you do have any problems, I do listen to you. I do listen to complaints, and I do listen to issues and all that kind of stuff. But just like, yeah, Eli, I saw this. From my point of view, Be like, oh, okay. Maybe I do something, maybe I don't. We don't need to go into a book about things. But anywho, I don't know how many of you I just pissed off. What are you going to do? So that is my spiel for the day. The other thing too is I am going to Miami. So going to Miami very, very soon. So if you are in the Miami area, I will be at different things in Miami. Not this. Jesus. What are they doing? They're putting out all kinds of crap. Anyways, so where is the stuff that I signed up for? So they actually have a Founders Run. So I'll be going to the 5K Founders Run in Miami. Apparently they do Founders Runs every Saturday. Isn't that cool? You get startup founders together and you run. Sounds interesting. I'll be at the Founders Run. Most likely. This whole Sweat Pals thing. They have Founders Pickleball. Founders Pickleball in Miami. That sounds cool. What else will I be at? They just screwed up my entire list. There's a Wynwood Tech Happy Hour. I'll go to that thing. There's a Miami Tech Mixer. I'll be at that thing. So if you're in the Network for Tech Startups thing. No, that's New York. There's a different one. Anyways, so I'll be at this stuff. If you're in Miami, I'll be doing that as we take a look around Miami and decide whether or not we're moving to Miami. Yummy. Anyways. We'll be there for a month. It is, I woke up this morning, it was 11 degrees. Felt like -4 here in Asheville. I'll be very happy to get to a place that's 70 degrees. Okay, so that's my spiel. I have wasted a lot of time, so you can come up with questions. Again, this is a question and answer session. Anything about technology. I'm not here to talk about Trump. If you want to understand about processors, if you want to understand about Python, backend languages, SQL, what's the difference between SQL and NoSQL, your career, your business, that kind of thing, ask a question. To ask a question, you raise your hand. So you raise your hand, and I unmute you, and you stay unmuted until we're completely done, and then I go on to the next person. This makes me nervous. So, here, I have to do a screenshot. I'm going to scoot this over. Which way? I'm so dyslexic sometimes. Well, I'm not dyslexic. And I do this. And then that does that. Hold on 1 second. Hold on. I'm just going to do this. And I smile. There we go. Got a screenshot for LinkedIn. Got to get those screenshots for LinkedIn. If you don't post it to social media, it didn't happen. Come to Tampa area sometime if you tour Florida. We did Tampa before. We actually did Tampa a number of years ago. Nice, quaint little place. But I gotta say with Miami, you know what I like about Miami? It has an international airport that has non-stops everywhere. I can literally hop on a flight to New York in the morning, do work in New York, and be back home by that night. And that is beautiful, at least from a professional standpoint. From an ecological standpoint, it's god-awful. What are you going to do in life? Okay, questions. Put your hands up. Can only answer the questions that you all ask. I am proud we have no buttholes today. Last week's buttholes. That was a hell of a thing. Come on, people. Anybody want to ask a question? There we go. Question. Okay, what's up?
You hear me?
I can hear you.
الويب the clients comes from the outside world, but in desktop apps, the clients are the workers in an office or in a business where those apps, those desktop apps, where is the app hosted and the database?
So if it's a desktop app, it's on the
It's
desktop.
locally or it's there is some services for it.
Yeah, if it's a desktop app, so if it's I don't know, if it's it's Pages. Um, there you go. So if it's Pages or whatever, this is on your computer. So this is hosted on your computer. So if it's this, it's on your computer. If it's Salesforce, so Salesforce is called software as a service, then it's up on the cloud somewhere, and you're simply using a web browser to access it. Is that what you're asking?
Okay. Like, there is no there is those I think I talk about the desktop apps for business for small businesses or for some office space or something like that. Uh, Apps that customized for that business, where those apps are hosted.
Oh, so if you're doing custom app, where the hell you want them hosted at? So if you create the app, it's no different than this. You're just spending less money to build it. So if you create a native app, so basically an app that runs on the system, then it runs on the system. If you use like a Bottle or Django as a web app framework, then again you are simply building a software as a service platform that happens to do whatever it is the client wants, and so then it's on the cloud somewhere. So if you're dealing with the corporate environment, right? So you got your corporate environment here. So you can have an app that just simply resides on the desktop. You can have an app that resides on the desktop and synchronizes with local servers or servers on the cloud. Things like Outlook, old-fashioned Outlook, or Mail, right? Mail is installed on your system, and then it synchronizes with email servers. You could host it on an internal cloud. So basically, you create essentially software as a service, but you run it on their own internal server, so it could be there. Or again, you could put that out to the cloud, and it could be running up on DigitalOcean or AWS or Amazon or something. So just like you can buy software that runs wherever it runs, you can also build software that runs wherever it runs. So like with Python, right? So there's the Bottle web app framework or the Django web app framework that allows you to create web applications. So with that, it would be on a server somewhere, either locally or on the cloud. There's also with Python, there's a framework called tkinter, and there's other frameworks that allow you to create desktop applications. So literally, you type out Python code, and from this text, it actually creates a window with buttons that you can right click and left click and double click and all that kind of stuff. So it's how you decide to design it.
Even if it's just for the workers in the office or in the factory, can be hosted outside.
Yeah, it can be hosted outside. Yeah, you just have to worry about security. So normally, if it's just for literally people internal to the building, most of the time you'll host it inside. So you'll have your own server inside that the users access. And the reason for that is just basic security. If it's inside your network, hopefully it's more secure. But you could have it on DigitalOcean or Amazon, and they just go out to get it. What you have to think about, depending on where you're going to be hosting it, is what does their network connection look like, right? So here in the U.S., you've got 100 megabit per connection, maybe a gig connection. So going up to AWS is no big deal. But some places in the U.S. and other places around the world, if you've got like a 1 meg connection or something that's pretty slow, then because of that, you may want to host it locally so that you don't run into the bottleneck of your ISP.
Which one is secure for some offices for privacy or something like that? Hosting outside or inside?
It depends. I mean, if you host it outside, there's more chance from somebody in the outside world being able to attack it. So that's a security risk. If you do it on the inside, depending on where your server is located, there's a chance that one of your interns is going to look at porn on your server and then crash the damn thing. Dealt with that in the past. So security is what you build, right? So if you have a server room and you lock everything down, having it locally might be more secure. But I've literally seen employees fucking look at porn on their servers, on the servers, not the desktop computer, and then everything kind of goes to hell. So security is basically just how you design it.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Cool. Okay, so mute you, lower hand. Vlad, put up a hand. Willis, that's not how you put up a hand. You do not have to be too technical to get here. Put up a hand. This is a hand. Hand. React. Raise a hand. Raise a hand if you're sure. Vlad, put up your hand and then I'll unmute you. Show Willis how to put up a hand. Vlad. I will write it out first. Ah. Oh, Willis. Anyways, Willis isn't putting up his hand. So I will ask Willis to unmute. I'm here to serve. What's up, Willis?
Hello, how you doing?
Good.
I was doing the Python class you have, the self-directed.
Yep.
I'm at the part with the REST APIs.
Yep.
And I did the part with reading the JSON files and bringing in the JPG image.
Yep.
But you was saying you can also do videos, pull videos or streams in as well.
Not sure. So,
Well, just say like a YouTube video or something. If you wanted to capture that, could you do it the same way? Or is that different from like web scraping and the import request way?
yeah. Oh, yeah. So, okay. So when we're dealing with data files, it's just there's some differences. So a stream. So if you want to pull a full file, right? So like an MP4 file or an MPEG file. A file is a file is a file. So whether it's PDF or MPEG or MP3, you just pull that file down. When you start talking about streams, that's a different data type. And so there would be a way to deal with it. I'd have to figure it out. Because that's its own deal. And then when you start talking about YouTube, so what you deal with YouTube is YouTube does have files stored somewhere. The issue that you run into is they obfuscate, which is basically they kind of disguise where that file location is because they don't want you just to download it. Because if you just download it and watch it, then you skip all of their ads and they get really pissy. So there are modules out there that you can try. So there's Python modules that you can find that will try to get like the actual file for a video so that you can actually be able to download it. So that's the type of thing where you would use a Python module to download the video file. You wouldn't do that through a REST API call.
Okay.
Ready? Cool. Anything else? Any other question there?
That's it for right now.
That's it. Okay. Cool. There you go. Got some technical questions. Woo for the technical questions. I do like those. Okay, more questions. The longer I'm a teacher, the more I have pity for my old teachers. Robbie, Sean, Steve, Christina. Any questions? It's Friday, man. It's Friday. I have a question. Oh, Robbie, can people put their hands up? Put your hands up. Anyways, Robbie, what's up?
Hey, sorry, I can't find the stupid raise hand thing.
It's down by the react. There's a little heart react thing, and then you click on that, and then there's a raise hand. So, anyway, what's the question? What's up?
I guess two quick questions. As a fact is, kind of a follow up to that SaaS question is if you wanted to get started, like if you wanted to bang out something and get an MVP, what would you start in? Would you start with Python or, or on a napkin, or how do you start that creative process of making a SaaS program?
So the first thing that you would do, like the very first thing that you do is, it's called wireframing. We need to have we're going to have an introduction to programming series at some point when I get to it. But basically all a wireframe is, and you can literally do this on scraps of paper, is you just draw out what you want your app to look like. So it would be like, this would be the home page, and in the home page you would say like add account, and then you would point this to the add account form, and then you'd have like what information, it should be add an account. And then it's like if you want a report of accounts, you like kind of do that, and then you say, okay, that goes down to this page that will be, reports. And then you kind of draw out what you want this to look like. And basically what you initially do, again, with a wireframe, is you literally simply draw out, zero code at all, draw out what the hell you think that you want this thing to look like. And then, how what data, what information do you need? How do you expect the users to interact with it? And all of that type of stuff. Once you get done with this, then you start doing something called pseudocode. So when you start looking at these pages, right, you start look like say add user or add account. So you'll be like, okay, so let me create a little script here, and I'll be like, okay, add first name, and then I'll be like add last name, and then I'll be like add something, and then down here be like submit to database. And so what we're doing here with pseudocode is in actual human language, we are simply writing out what the hell we want to have happen. And then as you start to look at this is then going to start guiding you to what programming language you want to use. So every programming language does a specific task, just like QuickBooks does something and Word does something, right? And so like, if you're writing this out and you realize, okay, I'm going to need to be connecting to the Microsoft stack, so Active Directory, Exchange, SharePoint, or whatever else, then you're like, oh, okay, since I need to connect to the Microsoft stack, the most appropriate programming language for that is most likely going to be C#, right? Or if I'm designing all of this and it's like, oh, I want this to be a application that's going to be running on mobile. So it's like, okay, there's going to be a mobile thing. Then that's where you might use React Native, or you might use something like Flutter. Those are frameworks. If this is just going to be a web application, then with Python, you can use the Bottle web app framework. So we have that self-study program on that, or Django or something else. And so basically from this is where you start deciding what languages and what frameworks are appropriate for the task that you're starting to do. And then once you figure that out, then you literally go back through this and you literally turn these into lines of code. And that's the basic idea of how you create the wireframe. This is how you create the wireframe for your project. And then once you get the wireframe of your project done, this is how you go through and then build out what would be called your prototype of your project, and then go from there. There's some wireframe tools out there. So Figma apparently is the cool wireframe right now. Back in the day, I used to like Visual Studio. It used to be great for wireframing because you could do wireframing and programming within the same environment. So again, depending on where you want to go with all this, you just kind of got to do your research on what products are appropriate. Does that make sense? Did I lose Robbie? Does that make sense, Robbie?
Yeah, sorry, I was answering the chat.
Yeah.
I think someone else had their hand up, but my just follow-up question too is, I guess, kind of where you just left off, is that once you have something, how do you deploy it? Because I've heard of serverless servers and things like that. Maybe that's where I'm stuck because I'm like, that doesn't make any sense to me when someone just says that in English. It's like serverless server. Is that something that doesn't? It's like it has to have RAM or something. It has to do something. It has, aren't there some moving parts in there? But
Yeah. So when you deploy it, so deploying will depend on what the hell it is that you're building, right? So if you're creating a mobile application, deploying will be to sending it to the Google Play Store and the iOS App Store. If you're creating a program that people are going to install locally on their systems, then you put it up on an FTP server or send out CDs or whatever. If you're going to be deploying it as a software as a service, right, basically the cloud, then you have to figure out your cloud provider. So that would be Azure, that would be DigitalOcean, that would be AWS, obviously. And within that, there are a lot of different components, right? So your application, so if you have software as a service, you're dealing with software as a service, the first thing is you're going to have your web server. So generally nowadays, cool kids use Nginx. And basically what Nginx does is when traffic comes to your web application, it appropriately routes it and deals with caching mechanisms and that kind of thing. From there, it's going to point to wherever the code for your app is. So again, if you use Python or whatever else, you're essentially going to have some place where this is running. So when you use a web app framework, so you use Bottle, you actually create a service. That service runs your Bottle application that Nginx is able to pick up. But basically, you have all this Python code here, and that's what Bottle is going to present to Nginx, and then Nginx is going to present to your users. Then under this, then there's the whole question of what are the services your application is going to provide, and then how are those going to be provided. So that's where we talk about like REST API calls. So a API call is where your app communicates with somebody else's system in order to get some kind of resources or whatever. So if you want to send SMS messages, I would simply use Twilio, and they have an API call so your app can send SMS messages or actually receive SMS messages through the Twilio API. If you want cat facts, there's cat facts APIs out there. And so that's the API. Then under this, you're going to have what is called your database. So again, we have the class on SQL, so it's a relational database. It'll be something called structured query language. And basically, this is where you store records. So people's information, this is all text records, and this is where you'll store all of your text records. Then you have something called your data store. And your data store is where all the files are located. So either files that are going to be presented to your users, if they're going to be downloading stuff from your app, or if they're uploading stuff to your app, this is where the data store and wherever that storage is, that's where it's going to get dumped. Now here's where serverless architecture comes in. And again, it's important to understand where these words are. So if you go back 10 years ago, let's say somebody uploaded a file to your web application. So let's say you had a version of YouTube. You wanted to copy YouTube. So somebody would upload a file into your data store. Once it was in your data store, you would then have your server basically run an encoding script to encode that video file multiple different ways. So when you watch a YouTube video and you can see, there's like a 144 version, and a 360 version, a 480 version, a 720 version, a 1080 version. Those are actually entirely different versions. And so a server somewhere had to take the original file and then basically had to re-encode it in different sizes. And so before, you would have the server. So you would have a server that you owned that would grab this file, it would then encode it in 7 different ways, and dump it back into your data store with records going to your database. So you controlled all of that. So generally it would be something called FFmpeg. So you would build it, you would create a server, you would install FFmpeg onto it, you would configure it, you would create the scripts for it, and then you were entirely responsible for that encoding process. If something went janky, God bless, you have to figure it out. Where serverless architecture came in, or what can be called cloud functions came in, again, about a decade ago, is what a lot of these cloud providers realized is, wait a minute, most people need to do the exact same compute tasks. So why don't we just create services that do those compute tasks? And that's serverless architecture. So basically what you do is you feed their serverless architecture. You say, here's the video file. I need it encoded these 7 different ways, and I need the output dumped back into my own data store. Do it. And you don't have to care about what operating system it's running on. You don't have to worry about the configurations. You don't have to worry about viruses or hackers or power supplies failing. You just say, do it. And that's what serverless architecture is. So depending on what exactly it is you're trying to deploy, you're most likely not using serverless architecture per se. But that's the idea. The idea with serverless architecture, again, I got in this argument with the weird an owner of an MSP company, which was bizarre. And it's like, serverless architecture does not mean there's not a server. Sure as hell doesn't mean there's not hardware. Basically what it means is I don't give a damn about it. I'm not running the update command. I'm not worried about security policies. I'm just gonna like do it, and then I just swipe my credit card for 1 cent per encode or whatever. So that's a basic overview of how like a web app it gets deployed. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. Also, I had to look up really quick the original company that Linus Tech Tips worked for, because that was NCIX and not NGINX. It's funny because I was like, that sounds the same.
No.
It's different.
Different. Yep.
Yeah, thanks for all the knowledge and tips. I appreciate it. And really quick, I think you should have a button on your website where you sell an internet hug or something to that guy that needed a hug or something. Just sell him.
Here's a hug. No, I don't want to hug people. No. The problem you get into, and again, just so everybody watching this understands why I become so hard ass on this, is what's it called? It's pseudo. What the fuck it is? Pseudo. They're like these pseudo relationships. Like the modern world is so fucked up. God, I wish people went back to just doing drugs and having unprotected sex. That was so much safer. Anyways, in this modern world, like people feel like they have a relationship with you when they don't, and it just becomes this very weird mess. And I actually meet you folks again. Like for me, like I've run into people in Rome, in Amsterdam, in Cancun, in Seattle, in Miami, halfway up a mountain, and so I have to be careful with that whole. We don't know each other. So that's why I do it. But yeah, no virtual hugs. I am not the person to hug. They do have meetups. They have meetups, cuddle meetups. I do think people should go to more cuddle meetups though. Yeah. Cool. Okay, I'll mute Robbie then. Next question. There we go. See, we got questions. That's how question and answer sessions work. Who else has a question? Oh, that guy is setting himself up for a ton of disappointment in life. I would completely agree. I just want to be nowhere near it when he realizes that fact. Okay, there we go. What's up?
I want to ask you about the concept of templates in the backend
The what in backend?
framework. I don't understand. Is it templates in backend framework?
Oh, yeah. Oh, templates for Bottle web app framework? Is that what you're talking about?
Yes. Varel or Laravel or
Yeah. Well, if you-
the templates. Is it where the backend meets with front end and then displays
yeah. So
the dynamic data from the database? Sure.
yeah, so the templates, all the templates are, it's basically think about it as a template, right? So what he's talking about is, again, for web app frameworks, you will deal with templates. There's something called a template engine. So Nginx, Bottle, most Python web app frameworks have what's called a template engine. And so the idea with a template engine is so you have your Bottle, you have your web app framework here, and your code, right? And in this you have your modules, and you define functions, and the functions have routes, so route to index, route to about, route to whatever. And under this, you're going to have Python, and Python is going to collect all the information. So Python is going to go to your SQL database to pull information out, or it's going to go up and grab information from REST API, whatever. So basically Python here within the web app framework, its responsibility is to do like that compute and kind of like the intelligence work, right? So it will communicate with ChatGPT or OpenAI. It will communicate with Twilio. It will communicate with these other things. Once it gathers all of that information, so it'll gather that information as variable values. Then what happens is the return from this function, you'll actually use the template function, and you'll return a template, the name of a template, with the variable names that you want sent to the template. Then what happens is you have this template file here, right? So you've got the TMP file or whatever it's called. And in the template file, basically it is a template. So you draw out what it's supposed to look like. So you say like, hi, and then you do squiggly bracket, name. And so when this gets sent, it will be hi, Bob. And then like if it's a record, so let's say you're printing out like, I don't know, all the transactions of Bob or whatever, right? So basically it would be, it uses their language. So it'd be like for X in records, and then you'd write out all that stuff. And so basically the idea with the template here is you're literally creating a basic or a template for how the data is supposed to be presented. And so Python sends data to the template. The template engine uses that template file to then fill in all of the blanks to dynamically write out that web page. And then once it's created that, it sends all of that to the user. And so in your template, this is where you'll have CSS. This is where you'll have JavaScript. This is where you'll have your embeds. So if you're doing like video embeds or something like that. So the template file, yes, the template file is where you write your front end language stuff, and things will be basically populated by the information that comes from Python. Does that make sense?
Yes, yes.
Yep, cool.
Another question about Silicon Dojo.
Yep.
Is there some classes about project, real world project to deploy?
Real world projects to deploy. So again, I'm getting to everything. These things take a while. Each one of these classes takes about a month. So we will have labs and projects. I mean, that's my plan. The big thing with Silicon Dojo is, again, you learn to hit, again, called Dojo, you learn to hit by hitting. And you learn to get hit by getting hit. So at the end of the day, like I want lots and lots and lots of projects. Whether you can copy paste those particular projects for your clients will probably be a big question mark. Again, I don't want this to turn into like some free software thing. So when we do have projects, they will try to solve real problems or show you how to solve real problems, and then it will be up to you to then take that and turn that into something that you actually want to sell end users. So everything here is going to be educational. So for the most part, you shouldn't be able to just copy and paste and sell. I mean, if you can, God bless, you do it, but it's probably not going to be to that degree.
Okay, thank you very much.
Oh. All right. Oh, no, don't unmute. I'll lower his hand. There we go. Okay, there we go. Look at that. Well, there's tech questions. I almost feel like a real technology professional. I don't feel nearly like a therapist. It's a funny thing. I've done hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of one-on-one meetings, and I swear to God, 99% of them I feel like a therapist. I never want to be a therapist. I like tech questions, though. Okay, more tech questions. Vlad, are you back? Do you got a SQL question for me? Somebody put their hand out. Robbie again. What's up, Robbie?
thanks. If no one else is going to go, I just wanted to ask, do you use any of the no-code, low-code stuff or believe in any of that stuff like Bubble? Or I've heard of people using Zapier stuff like if this, then that. Have you used any of that stuff in your career or projects?
I played with it if this, then that, IFTT. So I played with IFTT like a decade ago. I played with Zapier a little bit. Honestly, my issue with that as a tech professional, so like if you're dealing with lower level tech people, like desktop administrators or whatever, low code, no code is probably fine. I just find the learning curve on that stuff to be fucking brutal. Like I'd rather learn a language, to be honest with you. Because I've gone to things like hackathons where they're like, yeah, we're just going to use a low code, no code solution. And you got 3 hours to build something. And then like 3.5 hours later, I'm still learning how to use this product. Like, because it is a product itself. So that's my thing with the low code, no code. I have friends of mine who are coders who absolutely love low code, no code. But again, you've got to trust it because remember, basically, if you're using that, especially if you're using somebody else's systems like Zapier, it's all up in their systems. You don't have that code. It's all theirs. If they flake out, if they go out of business or whatever else, you're done, which makes me concerned. So yeah, that's kind of my thought about it. Is it's like one, the learning curve can actually be brutal. I think learning a programming language is easier. Two, you don't own it. So if something weird happens with that company, it can cause you problems. Or again, all kinds of weird stuff. They could increase the price of calls or whatever. They could change who they connect to. There's all kinds of weird stuff like that. So yeah, that's kind of what I look at with it. So again, if you find something that's good, use it. Again, I know a lot of coders who do love, like they're coders, they're professional coders. They still use low code, no code. It's just not my cup of tea.
Got it. Yeah, I was just wondering if there's any like little, a module you could plug into your normal code or sometimes call out to. I mean, possible, but I don't know. Probably just easier to find a coded solution, I guess, or something.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, nowadays too. I mean, like with ChatGPT. Again, ChatGPT is not AI, as I'll get on my soapbox about. But I mean, yeah, you can ask it to do something, and it'll write you 50 lines of code. So, like, again, that's the thing too. Is if you go back like 3 years ago, when you had to know the code, or if you didn't know the code, your option was Stack Overflow. Then using no code, low code sometimes was a lot easier because it could just do the connections. I need to connect to Google, it just did the connection. But again, nowadays with ChatGPT or with Copilot, you literally say, I want to send an SMS message through Twilio, and it'll just go, blah, there you go. So as long as you know the basics of the programming language, I think that's easier.
Yeah, wow. It's we live in interesting times.
Yeah. Things are changing. Things are changing. Just remember, if you solve problems with technology, you should be fine. If all you know is one little niche of technology, then yeah, your career is probably going to be over pretty soon. But if you keep rolling with things, you'll be good.
Yeah, got it. I'll let someone else ask a question.
Yeah, sure. Okay. Let's see. Mute you then. And questions. Christina. Sean. Vlad. I thought I had a sequel question. I was looking forward to a sequel question here. Anyway, Vlad. There we go. Let's hear the sequel question. This better be a good sequel question.
Yeah, I actually don't have that question anymore. You basically answered it when you were explaining about Nginx and the databases, and that whole framework that you outlined on the board.
Yeah, okay.
So, thanks.
Any other question?
No.
Nope. Okay, fair enough. Fair.
I'll think of it. I'll think of one.
Christ. Okay, people. Here's the thing. Before you come to these sessions, just scribble down a couple of questions. It makes life easier for all of us. Okay, well, Robbie is the new jock, apparently. Robbie's the new jock. So we'll keep answering Robbie's questions. What's up, Robbie?
Oh yeah, I guess you're asking about SQL. What's the big deal about TQL? Is it just have extra capabilities? I mean, everyone's talking about that now. Like, oh, it's extra things you can do. I mean, I can look it up, but have you used that and accelerated your projects with TQL, which is
TQL? I have no.
I guess it has stored procedures or something.
Yeah,
I don't know a whole lot about it, but it's like the next step once you know SQL.
TQL? Transact? Is it Transact SQL? Transact TSQL is Microsoft.
TSQL, I guess.
Yeah, no, I don't know. I haven't played with that. Transact SQL is Microsoft's and Sybase's proprietary extension to SQL. So it's an extension to SQL used to interact with relational databases. T-SQL expands on SQL standard to include procedural programming, local variables, various support functions for string processing, date processing, blah, blah, blah. Is central to using, Microsoft SQL Server. That's why I don't mess with it. So when we talk about database, so we talk about SQL. So SQL is structured query language. So this is actually an ISO standard. I think it was 1987 it came up. They came out with it. So SQL is kind of like HTML. So just like you can use HTML for Firefox or Opera or Internet Explorer or Safari, SQL, the language, can be used for MariaDB, MySQL, Postgres, SQLite, Oracle, and Microsoft SQL Server. So that's like the standard language for communicating with these servers. But then that server is its own product, right? So SQLite does things differently than MySQL does, which does different things differently than Microsoft SQL Server. So from what this is saying, then T-SQL is basically it's an add-on extension for Microsoft SQL Server, and yeah, I don't have any experience with Microsoft SQL Server, so I don't know.
Okay, so it's kind of the same as like Power BI. Isn't that a Microsoft product? I mean, there's a lot of Microsoft stuff, but it's its own thing.
Yeah, no. I mean, this would be lower down on the stack. So Power BI. So when we talk about BI, it's called business intelligence. And so basically, what Power BI should be doing is creating reports. So one of the big issues we have nowadays is all these companies have so much data, but data is not valuable. You need to pull information out of that data and come up with charts or some kind of documentation to tell you what you should care about. So what Power BI will do is it will pull that information together in order to give you something that's actually useful. So that's kind of higher on the stack. It's more of a product that you're using type of thing. Where this is much lower. So again, when we talk about the programming language, right? When I talked about you go through and you create the pseudocode. So when you're writing that pseudocode and you're figuring out what your program actually needs to do, that's where you might come to this thing where you're like, I need procedural programming in the database itself, and the only product that offers it, is Microsoft SQL Server. So therefore, that's what I'll use instead of something like MySQL. So this would be much lower on this. So this is like, there's like SQL. SQL is about as low as you're gonna go, and then T-SQL will be like right on top of that. Whereas Power BI would be way the hell up here. Oh, good deal. All right. There we go. We all learn about new things every day. Cool. Okay. Any other question? There we go. We got another question. We'll unmute you. We'll mute you. Okay. What's up?
Hey, you hear me?
Yep.
If I want to go the route of building websites, web design, or something like that,
Yep.
Is it good to go with the no code stuff, or is it to know a language and use AI to ship fast?
Yeah, I mean, I would argue, again, personal preference. opinions, biases, personal preference. I would argue right now, especially if you're new, you should learn these programming languages and basically learn how to build it with the programming languages. Again, especially with Python or the web app frameworks. But again, you have to look at what your abilities are. You have to look at, especially if you're going to be building a company, you have to think about what the institutional knowledge of your company is going to be, how much training you have to put people through. Then you also have to look at how much your clients are willing to pay, right? So if you're writing out a whole bunch of code, they're going to have to pay for all that code. So sometimes it's better to use low code, no code, because you can spin something up in a day. Right, so you go to the client, you say, in order for me to build this application for you, it's going to cost $10,000, and then they have a small heart attack, and they just can't afford it. They can't afford $10,000. So you're like, well, how much can you afford? $2,000. Well, if you can only afford $2,000, I can't spend that much time on it. So ergo, maybe use like low code, no code in order to make all the connections and everything, and you might be able to actually spin that up quicker within your particular environment. So yeah, it's a lot of, any product, whether it's a programming language or low code, no code or databases or anything else, it all comes down to what are the requirements of your customer, what are the resources that you have available, how much time do you have, and what is the institutional ability to maintain whatever the hell it is that you created. And so when you look at all those things, then you figure out what products you're going to use. So let's say you build this thing. Let's say you build this thing, and when you get done, so you're done, you have to hand this off to somebody in the company. So somebody in the company is going to maintain it. Right? It's a lot easier to maintain low code, no code once it's been built. So if like a user account changes or something like that, they can just go in and they can just modify like one of the little components or whatever. So that might be one reason it would go with low code, no code. On the other hand, if they try to make it more complicated, right, there's a lot of stuff to consider. So there's no really right answer there. So yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
In case if you want to go just with small businesses in downtown or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, like I say, again, my preference would be to code the entire damn thing out. Again, especially with ChatGPT and modules and all that, I think that would be a better way to go. But I mean, there's arguments for low code, no code. So again, it's one of those. It's not a. It's kind of what you have to figure out what you like and what you're prepared to do, 1,000 times type of deal. So I'd say play with different things. Play with Zapier. Play with IFTT. Play with was it Make? Make is the new cool one out there. Play with some of the tools and see what tools you like and what tools you don't like.
Okay.
Yeah.
When WordPress comes to this,
Sorry, I missed the
is
line.
WordPress can be considered a mixed? Is WordPress can
WordPress.
be considered a mixed of no code and code?
What? I don't know. What the hell is
Is
WordPress?
WordPress can be considered a mixed?
I don't know what WordPress is. WordPress is WordPress. I don't know where that fits in. No, like when you talk about low code, no code, it's more codey than WordPress. What is it? WordPress is a content management system. It's what's called a CMS. So basically, WordPress is a pre-packaged piece of software that happens to be open source that you're able to add plugins into. So WordPress is a CMS. So it's neither low code, no code, or code. It's CMS, which is its own deal, which is fine. CMSs are great. Like there's WordPress, there's Drupal. I don't know if people still use Drupal. It used to be Joomla. Joomla sucks. So yeah, that's just a highly configurable package. Yep.
Okay, but WordPress you own your stuff.
Yeah, so well on WordPress, so you can build websites or systems for other people, and WordPress now is very complicated. So when I started using WordPress in 2008, it was basically just a blogging platform with some additional plugins. But nowadays with WordPress, I mean, you can turn it into a help desk system. You can turn it into an accounting system. Like there's lots of all those plugins that you can add in. Those add a lot of functionality to it. So you can do some pretty impressive stuff with WordPress. But again, it goes back to what is it your users want or your customers want, and what is it that you want to provide.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yep. Yep. Vlad had his hand up, then it went down. Vlad, you still got a question?
Yeah. So my question is actually also about that, but it's more general about IT languages. And there's I was watching a video about the IT iceberg, and that there is a big distinction between the professionals who have been in the field and know so many different languages, and then also the younger professionals who are just learning high level languages. So my question was about just in general, low level languages versus high level languages, and how do you navigate between the languages, I guess. And if I started studying something like a low level language, will it be an impediment for me if I don't know any high level languages?
I mean, is it an impediment for you? No. Again, programming language, when you look at a programming language, all it is literally a piece of software. And, as I say, you can write a term paper in QuickBooks, but it'll suck. And you can create invoices in Word, and it also will not be a great experience. That's kind of how it is with programming languages. They all do specific tasks. So when you're talking about these low-level programming languages, the question that you have to ask yourself is, again, what problem are you trying to solve for? So like when we talk about databases, right? Is the problem that you're trying to solve for, do you want to create an app that is able to interact with a database and be able to push and pull data and be able to find records, that type of thing, right? If that's the case, then you want the high-level language. Again, Python, Node.js, something like that. On the other hand, if you're working for a company, like again, I took a class from MySQL. So when MySQL was still MySQL, I went through one of their boot camps, 2005 or something like that. And what was interesting is they had just gotten a contract with Travelocity, and what Travelocity wanted was they were already running MySQL Server. They hired MySQL to literally go in and tweak the Linux kernel to be more optimized for MySQL so that they could get, percentage points of, increased utilization on every CPU cycle. So again, if you've got Travelocity, you've got hundreds of thousands of people hitting your site every single day. If you can get just 1% more processing power out of each CPU, that matters a lot. And so that's where you go in with the low-level languages, and you actually like tweak the database engine itself, right? And so that's the difference. Like, do you want to create a program that's going to use encryption, right? So you're going to create a communication program. It's going to be end-to-end encryption. So you go out and you get something off the shelf. This is what we're using for end-to-end encryption. Or do you want to use a language that's going to create the encryption algorithm, right? That's completely different worlds. And so that's where you just have to, you've got to decide what you're actually interested in. Yeah.
Wow, that's amazing. Yeah, and I did not know about. I did not know anything about this actually. So it's very interesting.
Yeah. The cool new language, I mean, you might take a look at is, are you the Rust person? Anyway, somebody was talking, I was talking to it with Rust. Rust is supposed to be kind of like an everything language. You're supposed to be able to do low level stuff and high level stuff with. I looked at it. I find it ugly as hell. It makes my eyes bleed. But you know, if you want to do something that can do both low and high, I think Rust might be a good solution. But yeah.
Hmm. Yeah, it seems like what the employers really want is something like a combination of different languages, and even if you know Python, they really want you to know other languages as well. I forget the framework that you need to know for this, but I was actually applying for one job, and it was it was some software development, software testing related position. And yeah, it sems like it didn't really make any difference whether I knew whether I had the number of languages on the resume or just the one language. But yeah, thanks again for your answer. I did not know that about the languages.
Yeah, because that's the thing. Is like you're not gonna build a website with C++. That's so yeah, that's where you just gotta. Yep.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, that's one thing to think about with you all too. Is like this whole thing. Like, I really hate the questions about getting jobs. I like questions about databases, but getting jobs are pain. Getting a job has always been a pain in the ass. Even during the dot-com boom, it was a pain in the ass. And one of the things you have to realize with getting a job, and when you look at help wanted ads, they are complete and utter disasters. And I'll explain to you why. So basically, when you get into the world of tech, right, you're gonna have somebody like me, or somebody not as nice as me. Not as nice as me. People think I'm an asshole. Anyways, and they're super, right? They're a team lead or they're running their department. And the thing is, they get hyper focused on what they're doing. Right? The most important thing is their servers or their code or whatever else. And one of the issues is, especially when you get really into technology, is it's hard to multitask. You don't really want to multitask, to be honest with you. You want to get on a project and you just want to run that project as far as you can take it. And so the issue is with a lot of team leads or such, is they're running that project just as hard as they can. And then they get to the point where they need a database admin, or they need another front end person, or they need somebody, right? They need a few more people. And so the issue is they go to their human resources department and they go, I need a front end developer. And then they walk the fuck out the door. And here's the thing, human resources doesn't know what the hell that means. Human resources has to deal with everybody. Human resources has to deal with everybody from janitors to warehouse workers to executives to coders. Right? So you say, I need a front end. They don't know what the fuck that means. So anyways, as the geek is trying to walk out the door, the HR person is like, no, you did that to me last time. Sit down. It's like, ugh. And so again, and then you get the geek sits down. And they're very mad. Their time is being wasted. Do you understand how important their time is? And the HR person is actually like, yes, I do understand how important your time is. That is why I'm trying to figure out what the hell you actually need. And so it's like, I need a front-end developer. Okay, what does front-end developer mean? It's like, I know we have these mobile apps and this app and that app. So you need somebody that knows iOS? Oh, yeah, they should know iOS. Oh, okay, so they need to know iOS. So do they need this? And then basically you have the HR person trying to figure out what the hell the geek needs. And the geek doesn't want to be there. And he's just like a cranky little bitch. And it becomes a disaster. And that's the reason you see idiotic help wanted ads. because the HR person is simply jotting down whatever the hell comes out of this geek's mouth because they don't know what the fuck any of this shit means. And then they just are like, okay, so you need somebody that knows C#, JavaScript, has 50 years of COBOL experience, and 105 years of Rust experience. Yes. Okay. And then that goes out. And then everybody cries. The geek doesn't actually get a decent employee because nobody matches that thing. And then, right? And so that's why, again, it's important for you folks to go out. That's where I talk about meetups. That's where I talk about going out with events. That's where you got to go. You got to go out and schmooze with people, even if you're an introvert or an aspie, because it's much easier to get jobs when people know you. When it's like, I am a team lead on a team. It sounds like you have the skill sets that I'm interested in. I need a resume, or you need to put a resume in with this specific information, and we'll try to get you in for an interview next week. That's what you want, because, yeah. Look, in order to love your field, in order to love the industry you're in, you also have to accept the industry that you're in, and yeah, there's a reason why almost every single help wanted ad for programmers is a complete and utter disaster that logically doesn't make a damn bit of sense. And it's frankly because the team leads and the people that should be taking the time to actually craft what the hell it looks like, can't be bothered. So yeah, anyways, that is me off my soapbox. Okay, any more questions? Dun, dun, dun. There we go. Okay, Sean, you can't put up a hand. Oh, pitying my old professors. Anyway, Sean says, I've been hearing a lot of hype around MongoDB. Yep, what's the learning curve like compared to SQL, such things as PostgreSQL? Would you recommend it for MongoDB for large projects? So I'll get into MongoDB at a certain point. I have limited experience with MongoDB. MongoDB became popular back in the day because it was an open source NoSQL database system. So we talk about NoSQL. So when you're dealing with databases, there is the ACID type of database and the base type of database. So relational databases, Postgres, MySQL, that type of thing, they are generally what would be called an ACID database. They're atomic, ACID, consistent, isolated, ACID, and durable. Hey, I remember what I taught. Basically, that means when you change something in the database, it gets changed, and everybody gets the same thing, right? So if you're doing an inventory control system, ACID is very important. If you're doing a payment system, ACID is very important, right? If you're doing some kind of that kind of record system, ACID is very important. The issue you came into with in the late 2000s, before 2010, is with things like social media companies, right? Basically, ACID-type databases are robust, right? They don't lose data, that type of thing, but they are a pain in the ass to scale and a complete and utter disaster to modify. So there's something called a schema. So you will create a schema for your ACID-type database. This will be all the tables. This will be all the columns in the tables. This will be data types for those columns. You basically sit here at a whiteboard, you design everything for your SQL database, and then you use code to turn it into the actual database system. Right. The thing is with NoSQL databases is they're incredibly scalable. They scale very easily. They're very easy to maintain, and you don't worry about the schema, which is what coders like. Coders hate to plan, so it's a much better product if you really hate planning, because basically you're actually able to add data directly into the database, essentially just with code. And so it's name key pairs, and so you just say this is the name of the whatever the variable or whatever, or the key, right? This is the name of the key, and here's the value for the key, and there you go. You don't worry about schemas or anything. That's where you get to basic. And basic, it comes down to like eventual consistency, which is interesting. So the idea with a basic database is that eventually everybody will get the same returns. So as people are adding stuff to the database system is figuring out basically where to store it. And so as new people make requests to basically pull information out of the database, when different users make those requests, they literally might get different answers at the exact same time because the database system is kind of like reshuffling how the data is in there. And so it will always give a response, but it might not actually give the most up-to-date response. And so again, that's good. If you're dealing with Twitter, if you're doing tweets, if you're doing Facebook, fine. You know, if you don't receive a tweet exactly when it gets created, it's probably not the worst thing in the world. And so the big thing with MongoDB, especially a decade or so ago, is MongoDB was an open source NoSQL database engine. And so that's what a lot of people used because they wanted to go down the NoSQL route. I don't know. I haven't heard many complaints about MongoDB. A lot of complaints about NoSQL. Again, what you use is important. What situation are you actually in? NoSQL can be a disaster if you don't use it properly, but so can SQL. So yeah, I mean, there's nothing wrong with MongoDB. We'll probably have a class on it at some point in the future. Again, I've got to sit down and play with it again. It's been years since I've actually played with it. So yeah, there you go. Would you recommend it for large projects? And again, we talk about large projects. Again, what the hell is a large project, right? A large project is not 1 million records. A large project isn't even 100 million records. If you're talking about something that's taking billions of records, MongoDB should be fine. Again, you just get you get into things like hardware resources at a certain point. Do you have do you have the CPU to deal with it? Do you have the RAM to deal with it? Again, it's interesting. I was reading up on that with SQLite. So I was originally researching SQLite. They were talking about the max number of inserts SQLite can do. And basically what it came down to is if you use a platter drive, I forget what it was. It was like you could do like 3,500 transactions, or it's like 3,600 transactions per minute, which again, right? I mean, for you, it probably doesn't matter. But again, big systems matter. And the reason it was 3,600 transactions per minute is because it was actually the RPM. So if you have a 7,200 RPM platter drive, every time that platter spins around, basically in order to put the transaction, add the record, the first spin of the platter is when SQLite writes to the platter. The second spin is where it verifies that the write was correct. So if you have 7,200 RPM, that means 72 revolutions per minute. If you have to do a write cycle and then a verify cycle, that then means you only get half of that for the amount of writes. So that gives you 3,600 inserts for SQLite per minute. And so that's when you start talking about large projects, that's the question you got to start at. Like, what the hell do you actually mean with large? Like, are you literally to the point where the RPM of your platter drive matters to how fast your system functions? Anyways, things to consider. For large projects, yeah, should be fine. Should be fine though. Willis raised his hand. What's up, Willis?
Yeah, I know you was talking about before the differences between Windows and the Mac,
Yep.
The pros and cons. I got a little experience with VM where we be using it as our job, so it'd be easier just to spin up a VM and put Linux on it, and then deploy that way too, just as well, wouldn't it?
Yeah, if you understand how virtual machines work, yeah. So whatever system you have, yeah, you use VMware or VirtualBox or whatever else. You create an instance of the operating system within a window, and away you go. The only issue I will bring up now, so like on my desk here, I've actually got 2 MacBook Pros. I've got a 2019 MacBook Pro here and a 2023 MacBook Pro here. So I've got the ARM one here and I've got the Intel one here. Curiously enough, with the ARM one, so you can install VirtualBox on the ARM, but when you go to install virtual machines on it, You have to install the ARM versions of the virtual machines. You cannot install Intel versions or x86 versions of virtual machines onto the ARM MacBook Pros. So that is a weird quirk. As ARM becomes more popular, that is going to be an issue with the whole virtualization issues. You just got to make sure, one, that you're using the right port of the operating system, and two, that there actually is a port for the operating system for whatever it is that you're trying to run.
Okay. Okay. Yeah.
Cool. Anything else?
That's all for right now.
That's all. Okay. Lower hand. Okay. Yep. What's up?
I I want to ask you about the AI models that generate images
Mhm.
and the process of training some models to generate similar images. The training will go as a service. You pay and you train some model for some set of images. I want to know the process how it works.
The process of training. I don't have enough money to train, so I haven't bothered to learn it. Again, you can go out and Google. The problem that you run into with actually training models is they do need an incredible amount of GPU power. And so for a lot of these models, if you're actually going to train it, it's literally hundreds of dollars per run. So you give it the data, you do the configurations, you send it there's services that allow you to train models. So basically you upload the data to the service, you put the configurations in, you have it run, and then like $600 later you get a model and hopefully it does something useful. Basically imagine if every time you hit the run button it costs you $600. At least, and that's what it is when you train a model. So again, I haven't gotten deep into that just because it's way the hell out of my budget. So yeah, if you want to, there is some Google searching out there, but it's expensive to do.
Well, I don't think that it's very expensive. I think that it's first thought in my mind. I think that it's just it's a reasonable amount of money, and that you give a set of images and for a model that already generate images.
So yeah, I mean, if you don't think it costs that much, I mean, honestly, like I say, when I looked at it, the budget was out of my ballpark again, especially doing for these classes. So I took a look. I was like, oh, that's expensive for my blood, and I moved on. Again, there's only so much I can do in life, so I don't know the answer to that question then.
Thank you.
Yep. Oh, last time you. What's up, Vlad?
Yeah, to follow up on the Mohsin's question, actually, could you elaborate on the differences between different like AI models for image generation? Like, yeah, I'm just like it's not like you can use like you can't use I don't know, like Leonardo or something like that for everything, right? You can also use like Gemini. You could use you can actually use Grok and other ones, right?
Yep.
So do you know anything about the differences? Considering you have all that GPU power, computing power to run these apps on your actual PC.
Well, so there's a difference between running the model and creating the model. So running the model, again, if you know how to do it, you can download it, you can run it off your system. That'll be as it is. It's creating the models that get to be expensive because it's got to use, when it goes through the whole creation process, as far as I've seen, it's a brutal, resource-intensive process. And then as far as the image models themselves, again, like if you're able to download it. So a lot of these you're able just to use the API call. So like with DALL-E, you can just use the API call. I think Gemini, you can just use an API call. So when you do an API call, there's almost no resource consumption on your system. So literally, I could use this Raspberry Pi 5 or Raspberry Pi 4 to make an API call to get an AI image, because an API call requires almost no resources of the system. So that's one of the things to be thinking about is, do you want to do the API call? Do you want to do it locally? And then if you want to do it locally, you have to go through all the steps to actually make it work locally. Like, so that's where, like, like Ollama. So Ollama allows you to do like text-based LLM stuff. You can also put in images and it'll figure things out. But the reason for that is I actually configured Llama, right? So Meta has their Llama model that you can just download and use. I configured Llama on my cheese grater Mac Pro, and it took like 3 minutes for it to come back with a response, because using the standard configurations that they give you, again, it requires a tremendous amount of resources, and even a cheese grater MacBook or Mac Pro doesn't have enough resources really to run it. And so that's what Ollama does. Is Ollama, the models that you download, they've already tweaked the configurations so that the model should be able to run reasonably on your system. And that's the whole thing. Like with using these models, there's a whole bunch of there's weights in there, there's different configurations, and you have to sit there and tweak the damn things to actually make them work. And again, I got Llama to work and it sucked, and so I moved on. Yeah. And then yeah. So as far as the image models, if you want to download them, like Stable Diffusion or something like that, then I mean it really is. It's the kind of thing you just go and you download it and you figure out the configurations and you put it on your hardware and you see how well it works.
Yeah, well, but the Stable Diffusion is, it's also, there was some other issues there with Stable Diffusion. As I was reading the news, there were a lot of articles about how it can, like at least the earlier models were running very differently on different hardware. But that's probably that's probably something that has already been solved.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you'd have to take a look at it, but I mean, they are going to be massively hardware intensive. Again, like when I'm running LLM, so again, the machine that's sitting here, we're actually talking, is an M2 Max with 32 gigs of RAM and whatever else. It's like that $3,300 laptop from a year and a half ago, and I mean, it runs LLMs. I mean, it's like it's not too bad with them, but yeah, I mean, like it requires hardware. Yeah.
It's a new world. Yeah, you're probably not sure what I'm talking about. Is from way back. But yeah, thanks again for saying it.
Cool. Yeah. Some of the stuff I do not know all the answers to. Again, like I say, a lot of the AI stuff. Again, I'm not that fascinated by it. It's good functionality. It's a good feature set. It's not going to destroy the world. It's like nails on a chalkboard when I hear about AI half the time. So yeah, I played with it. Good feature set. Again, if you need it for whatever you're doing, you sit there and do the research. Again, for what I'm doing with Silicon Dojo, I don't want to spend a hell of a lot of time on it, because the thing is, like with Silicon Dojo, just so you understand my mindset, is hardware resources to run a lot of these things are expensive, which also means, will you as students have the ability to access them? So if I teach you an API call, you can run an API call off of a Raspberry Pi. If you're actually running things locally, it's probably not going to work on most of your systems. So that's a big thing. And then also with a lot of these things, they're just changing so freaking fast, right? So if it takes me a month to do a series of classes, like Python. So we've done Python, we've done Bottle, and we've done SQL at this point. I'm pretty confident the series, as they stand, will be good for probably 4 years. It'll be 4 years before I even have to go back and edit any of those things, right? Whereas if I do classes on a lot of these LLMs and a lot of this AI product, like some of that crap is changing monthly. So if I spend a month to create this course, and then like literally like 2 weeks after I'm done, a whole bunch of things change. That is not a rat race I want to be involved in. So yeah. Oh. Let's see. Back to Sean. Thanks for the explanation. Back from MongoDB. I came across a systems design course today. They talked a bit about sharding and caching. They mentioned a little about Redis. How are such things important? Let's say you implement that in a Bottle framework application. So, I mean, you can or you can't. I mean, again, caching. I always love my cache. Can't have enough cache as far as I'm concerned. But all caching is you store locally a copy of something you got remotely, right? So we do caching like with REST API calls. So let's say you have your box here, and then the idea is, so you have your database server here, you have your DB server here, and so you make a request to the DB server, that database server, right? And so you have something called latency. So latency is a time it takes your server to communicate with the database server. The database server has to provide an answer and send it back to your server, right? So in computer time, that takes a while. So the idea with caching is, what if I have a little mechanism here that saves this? It saves the request, right? So you come up with a cache. And what happens is it saves the request and it saves the response. So instead of having to go all the way to the database server to get the response, it's able to go to the cache and say, for this request, this is the response that I got back. And most of the time, caching will be on system itself. So again, especially with big database systems, there's a whole bunch of stuff. And that's basically the idea with caching. So caching is that. No downside with caching. Again, whether you need to use caching for your database system depends on what the hell you're building, how big it is, blase, blase. Then sharding, what sharding is where you actually break it up. So sharding, a lot of times, you'll hear this in blockchain. So blockchain file storage shards files. And so the idea with sharding a file, right? Is you're a user, you want to add a file to the blockchain. And so basically the blockchain is essentially just a whole bunch of computers in a massive database cluster. So what happens is you have this one file. Now this one file is, let's say, 2 gigs in size. So if you try to put a 2 gig file on somebody's poor little Raspberry Pi that they have sitting in their basement, somebody's going to cry. That's not going to work very well. So the idea with sharding is you literally slice that file into incredibly small bits, or pieces, not bits, bits is a thing, into pieces. And then you're able to save those pieces to different places. So that when somebody downloads a quote-unquote file, they're not actually downloading the file itself. They're downloading these pieces. And then once they download all of those pieces, it gets reconnected back into that file. And so that's where you'll hear about with like blockchain file storage, where they talk about being encrypted and sharded, or sharded and encrypted. Is the idea is the file gets split up, and then those shards are encrypted, so they theoretically cannot be read. So not only do you not have the full file, but even the part that you have is encrypted, and supposedly that's safe. I don't know, whatever. Right, it's not sharding. And so basically with a database, as far as I understand with MongoDB, is the idea is you're able to shard that database. So that's kind of the concept of having the database on different servers. As far as I understand. Again, I do need to do more research on MongoDB. We are not there yet, but that's the basic idea. Caching, I'm 100% solid on. Sharding, as far as blockchain and that kind of thing goes, I'm 100% solid on. Sharding, as far as MongoDB goes, I'm pretty sure that's how it works. Might want to do some research on that. Oh, there you go. Okay, we're an hour and a half in. Any more questions? I've done my work for the day, so there's no more questions. I'm going to go have a Friday. Questions. Okay, Vlad is back with a question. What's up, Vlad?
Oh, no question. I just want to say, very interesting session. So, Eli, thanks so much for this great insight.
Cool. Yeah, no problem. I enjoy doing it. Again, technical stuff is great. Mommy and daddy issues suck. Technical stuff I like.
You know, it's your credo. It's your it's what you're doing, and your whole setup is really nice.
Yeah. Cool. Glad it's useful for everybody. Good deal. Okay, so there's that, and anybody else? Nobody else? No more questions? All right, that's fine by me. Oops. Oh, I got 2 more questions. All right, I'll get to Robbie. Okay, Robbie, what's up?
Hey, checking out any tech accelerators in your area and seeing what they're up to, or Y Combinator? I know all that stuff. I mean, Miami must be pretty exciting, hopefully.
Yeah, when I'm in Miami, I'm going to figure all that out. Like, I'm here in Asheville, North Carolina. We don't have anything here.
Okay, so you're not here yet, or?
Yeah, no. Tomorrow we leave, so we'll be there by Sunday. Oh, are you in Miami?
No, Tampa area, St. Pete.
Oh, you're in Tampa. Okay, yeah. No, we're about to hop in the car and drive down, like I say, for a month, and we'll be leaving tomorrow.
All right, well, safe trip.
Cool.
Have a safe trip.
Yeah. So yeah, when I get down there, that's where. Oh, oops, no. Yeah, I'll get down there. I'll go to the events. I'll schmooze with people. I'll talk. I'll buy people coffee, and I'll kind of figure out, like I say, what's going down in the Miami area. Because it's hard to tell. I mean, that's the whole thing. Like until you actually go somewhere, it's very difficult to understand what's really happening, what's really going on. So yeah, that's why we're spending a month there. If we go there and it's pretty good, we'll be moving. If we go there and it sucks, we won't be moving. Okay. Oops. There we go. Any final questions? Final questions. 3, 2, 1. Oh, there we go. One more question. What's up?
I want to ask you if Olama, the free model, can be deployed in a project or in a startup or in a business solution or something like that.
Yeah. Olama. So if anybody doesn't know, Olama is great. I love Olama. Olama.com. So this is a framework. So this is a framework for running LLMs. So that's the important thing. Again, whenever you look at these things, there are different components to the thing. So Olama, as far as I understand, is a completely open source framework. Verify it before you deploy it to your clients, right? But then on top of that, you have models. So you go up here and you click on models. Oops. And this will show you all of the current models. So you use the framework, you download and then run the model, and then that gives you what the functionality is. And that's where you come through here, and then you click on these different ones, and you see what their licensing is. So again, Llama itself is Meta's intended use case. They should have licensing somewhere in here. Okay, license, right? Acceptable use policy. Anyways, so you come here to license, and then you click on this. And like with Llama, it's weird. So grant rights. You are granted a non-exclusive, worldwide, non-transferable, and royalty-free limited license under Meta's intellectual property. Llama materials to use, blase. Gives you that. But there's like the weird thing with Llama, additional commercial terms. Like there's a weird thing with Llama, at least at one point, where if you had over 700 million monthly active users, you had to pay Llama, you had to pay Meta in order to use it. And so that's the thing, is so whatever model, so what you do is you go through and you play with all these models. They have so many models. They just have a metric crap ton of models here. So you go through and you figure out what model works for you. And then once you figure out what model works for you, you go and you take a look at the licensing of that model. Again, license, they have this, right? So this is an Apache 2 license. And so you just then go through and you verify that the license can be used in the environment that you plan to use it for. So that's how you work with Ollama.
Okay, Ollama, is it hard in resources or like?
So Ollama itself can run on a Raspberry Pi 4 because Ollama is the framework. The resources is where you get to these different models. So if we come up to, again, Llama, right? So Llama 3.1. So you'll notice here, I don't know if you can notice. So you'll notice here they have an 8B version, a 70B version, and a 405B version. So basically, on a decent modern desktop computer, 8B should work. A 70B will work on a good modern computer. So like my M2 MacBook Pro, I can run a 70B. It's pretty slow though. A 405B model, basically spend about $5,000 on building a desktop computer and it might work. And so essentially you're looking at the size, right? These are the size of the parameter sizes. And so the smaller it is, the easier it's going to be, right? So let's say DeepSeek here. So if you're looking at this like with DeepSeek, so a 1.5B version should run on a Raspberry Pi or a 2012 MacBook Pro. A 7B version, again, will run on a 2019 MacBook Pro. A 14B version probably will run on my M2 Mac Pro. And then as you go up, you need more and more resources. So this here is the resources to worry about. This will run on almost anything. This will run on almost nothing. Does that make sense?
About the resources, you pay as resources, yes, but if the resources are hard, you pay more money on the hosting like DigitalOcean or something like that.
Yeah, well, so if you're using DigitalOcean, then yeah, you have to be like, so you go to DigitalOcean, they have different sizes of droplets. So they have different sizes of droplets. You can rent GPUs. They've got a whole bunch of things. So basically, you can go to DigitalOcean and you can do like a Google search and say, using DigitalOcean to run this particular Ollama model, and they should tell you the resources that you'll need. But if you're running this on DigitalOcean, it's going to be pricey. You're probably looking at, I think for an 8 to run like 7 or 8B on a DigitalOcean instance, I think you're looking at like $60 a month at least. So again, it depends on what your budget is, but that'll be for DigitalOcean. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Thank you very much for the lesson.
Yep, no problem. Okay, lower your hand. Hong, what's up?
Okay, can you hear me? Yeah.
Yep.
Yes. I was wondering about what about the IT field and manufacturing? Is that other than database, SAP, and ERP services? How does the manufacturing hiring IT professional? What are they looking for? Do you know?
I don't know. Go ask them. I mean, again, like when you're dealing with manufacturing, again, it depends on what part of the manufacturing you're dealing with. So one of my sponsors used to be, what are they called? Phoenix. Anyways, they created industrial computing and networking units. So when you have all these robots are doing whatever they're doing. They actually have computers that are connected to them, and they have networking components that are connected to them. And so it's this industrial computer networking system. They actually have their own protocol that apparently is vulnerable as hell.
So it's that a lot of it is kind of proprietary.
Yep.
I mean, a lot of companies have each one. That's why I'm wondering. So, what exactly is that? Any new technology that kind of can be modeled after it? Like you learn about ChatGPT, you have an idea about DeepSeek, like element. But when manufacturing is like there's any advancement on it?
I mean, I'm sure there is. I mean, I'm not hardcore into manufacturing, so I don't know the specifics of it.
Okay.
Like I said, I know with the robots, I've talked with some people. Again, eagle eye view of manufacturing. Again, I don't know how you get a job with it, but the curious thing is as the quality of sensors have improved for robots. Like one of the reasons robots used to be so expensive is because the servos had to be exceedingly accurate, right? So before we had good sensors, the robots didn't know where they were in a three-dimensional environment. So everything had to be perfect. So when they were doing a motion 5,000 times a day, they had to do the exact same motion 5,000 times a day. Like if they were off by a fraction of a millimeter, multiplied by 5,000, they were just doing whatever the hell they were doing. So an interesting thing with modern manufacturing is that sensors have gotten so good, they've actually been able to decrease the cost of the robots because no longer does the robot precision as important because now the robot always knows where it's at. And so even if the movement is off slightly, it's able to self-correct in a way it didn't used to be able to. And so, I know that kind of thing from the manufacturing world, but yeah, it's not my,
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, if 90% of robotic problem is sensor related, that's what I was told, and it's true.
Yep.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, like if you're interested in any kind of company or whatever, again, the informational interviews, call up companies if you're interested in doing that type of work. Say, hey, can I come in? Can I do an informational interview? Talk with people. Can I buy you a cup of coffee? That type of deal. Because yeah, as you get more specific into silos or what we call verticals. So a vertical is basically the industry, right? So you got the construction industry, you got nonprofit industries, you got medical industry, right? And so the deeper you get into that vertical, they're going to have more and more specialized problems, right? So if you're trying to get into the manufacturing vertical, they're going to care about sensors, and they're going to care about, again, like real-time communication between robots and that type of thing. Whereas if you go to a hospital system, they probably don't give two fucks about sensors, but they really care about HIPAA regulation. And so that like I say, that's where all of you have to go talk with people to figure out what the people in the vertical you're interested in actually care about. Like I can't tell you that. I can explain database systems and that kind of stuff, but like what this niche industry needs, I don't know. Okay. Any more questions? Dun dun dun. All right, no more questions? I've got one. Hunter. Oh, raise your hand, Hunter. Crikey. What's up, Hunter?
Hey, I just started the Python program.
Yep.
And I just wanted to know like what the general format of these kind of Q&A sessions were. I don't want to be out of place when I have a question, but I don't want to be out of place in asking it. It's specific to a type of problem I'm trying to solve with Python, and I don't know really anything about Python, so I didn't know if this was the right format for this question.
Yeah, the only thing I request here is I don't give a shit about your mom or your dad. Don't ask me mommy daddy issues and we'll be just fine. Any kind of anything in technology, I will answer. Mommy daddy.
I've got someone for that. Don't worry about it.
So what's the question then?
So I'm trying to work with a piece of Python file that I was given, Python script that I was given, and the task that I was asked to do was to just basically take some some input or some variable that is created using the Python file and print it using matplotlib to a graph in 3 dimensions. And I thought to myself, that's pretty easy. I know how to do that because I have experience with MATLAB, so I'm like, okay, I can do that.
Yep.
But I have no real programming experience, so I'm trying to print with matplotlib, and I'm just not getting it to work. And I don't know if I'm. Yeah, I guess that's the extent of my knowledge base.
I mean, when you say it's not, is it getting data at all, or is it just printing it out weird, or like what is not working mean?
Yeah, so it's this piece of code. It's actually like a GitHub, I think maybe repository is what it's called, but it's a piece of code that's on GitHub. It's called PyRough, and basically what it does is it takes some input specifications, like variables that just we define using some material properties, and then it generates some random surface roughness. And what I'm trying to do is plot the random surface roughness that gets generated. And so I can generate that random surface roughness. It creates an STL file, which is like how I know that the program is running to completion.
Yeah.
And what I'm trying to do is like maybe say midway through the program maybe being completed, I'm trying to just say, hey, stop, plot this in my terminal, or plot this like as a saved PDF using the matplotlib library, and then continue running. And when I do that, it still runs the entire code to completion, but it doesn't plot what I ask it to in the PDF or in my terminal.
So so you're running it, then you stop it. Like, are you manually stopping it? You're hitting like Control C or whatever to stop it? Is that what you're doing? Or
no, I'm not manually stopping it. So maybe that was the wrong way to describe what I'm trying to do. I'm right now I have, let's say like on line 500, I have a variable y, and that y is the height of the surface that's been roughened.
Yeah.
And so my thought process is if I just plot that height according to the x and z variables I've already created, then that would be essentially the surface roughness. And so after that variable y, I'm just basically saying, now plot y. And it isn't plotting y.
Are you sure that file is looking how it's supposed? Again, I don't know what the ST file, what that's supposed to look like. Are you sure when you open up that file, does the data look like how you think it's supposed to look?
Yeah,
it does. Yeah, I don't know. Nah, not much experience with matplotlib. So you're running through. So if you run it all the way to the end, it works fine. But if you run it to the middle, it doesn't.
correct. Yeah.
So that. So you get to y. So wait a minute. So it's creating a file for you, right? So let's say this is the file. And so if you create the entire file, that works out fine for you. But you're saying, like, once you get to this particular variable equals something, if you just go there, are you just kind of like cutting it off? Are you just basically copying and pasting or something this and putting that in?
Kind of. So what I'm doing is I'm going to right now, I think def is how you define a function, right?
Yeah, def, yep.
Yeah, so it's defining a function, and this function is calculating the y.
Yep.
And so my thought process was, if I just go into this function, and after it calculates y, if I tell it to plot y, then whenever it calls this function, it will plot y after determining y.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah, so I have no idea how that function works, but I have a feeling you don't know how that function works either. So I think you're coming from a good place, but I have a feeling that function isn't doing what you think that function's doing.
Okay.
And so, yeah, so you have a function, whatever, and then it's doing its stuff, and at some point, once it creates y, so y equals something, and then you're just basically saying plot y there, and then is that basically what's happening in the function?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So I have a feeling. So it's plotting y, but this function is returning. Is this function returning a value somewhere?
Yeah. So that function, the only place this function can return a value is to the STL file, I think, and that STL file has the roughened surface. So it must. My thought process is it must still be calling that function and outputting y because this y is the only spot where where the height of the roughened surface is determined, and that would be the only vector that could give us that geometry.
I mean, so you already know your x. So you already know your x and your z, and then the function is creating the y.
Yes.
So could you create, once you get your y back, what I'm wondering is could you create like a second ST file to then put, if you know your x and you know your z and you just got your y, could you then create code that would then just iterate that once into the file?
Oh. Yeah, I probably could just have some other file that just calls this function as well, and then uses the y variable from the function to plot.
Yeah.
So it's not.
Yeah. So if you can get this y variable out, like what I would think is it would be kind of ugly. I mean, just off the top of my head, I would come up with like some kind of timestamp system. So every time this thing runs, I would then create a file. I would use the timestamp as the name of the file, and then plug in. So it would be like timestamp.st essentially, and then I would plug in the x, the z, and the y to that. And then what would happen is when this goes through and it plots it however many times, I mean, God help you, you'd actually get that many files. And then you could go through and you could pick which iteration of it you wanted to plot out. I think that might work.
Okay. Yeah, I can probably try that.
Yeah.
Well, I can definitely try that. I can probably recreate that.
Yeah, because basically what I think is happening, what I would guess is happening, is you probably have, on the SD file, you probably have important information here, and you probably have important information here. And so essentially, when you're just trying to chop it off at this level, you're losing something here that actually matters, that you just don't realize matters, would be my guess.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And again, I don't know, so I'm not sure what to look for there. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the other thing too, is what you might look at is, again, if you're plotting this out, try to plot something as small as possible. Like, see if you can do this for only one iteration, and then open this ST file and then actually take a look at it and try to figure out if you can read what that formatting means. It may be pretty simple. You may be able to tell this is the header and this is the footer, and and so you need to copy the header and the footer and then just plug your information in there. Maybe.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep. Cool. No problem. Any other questions? Good. Okay, Robbie again. And just so everybody understands, this is our job. See, here's the thing. Like, if you were paying me hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of dollars an hour, basically, this is exactly what we would do. I would sit here, I would talk to you about the problem, we would work through at an academic level as much as possible, and then once I figured that out, what I would do is I would then just sit down and basically code what I just told him to code and figure it out that way. So again, this is what I say. Again, this is where our job is done. This is where 99% of our salary comes from. And then from this, 1% of our salary comes from actually writing the code and trying to make the damn thing work. So anyways, Robbie, what's up?
Hi, I just wanted to attempt to try to answer the question possibly because I had to look up, trying to recall something I learned. Hunter, check out, there's a Memphis Python user group on Meetup, and the last meeting I went to was on Monday. I just looked it up. The guy there named Doug Starnes he was going over matplotlib, and the one takeaway I learned is he said something like, it's very important to change the axes. There's like an axis command, because it parses like the columns and there's rows. So if you don't put anything at the end of the line, supposedly it's only doing the columns, and you have to put, dot axis something to change it to go to the rows or something. That could be it, might be nothing, but he drilled that in our heads. Like that's the one takeaway is, change the axis to get to the other data, or else it won't plot it, I guess.
Cool. There you go. That might be a solution. Cool.
I knew this stuff too. I'm trying to learn Python and do some data sciencey things.
Good deal. Yeah, that's the thing with all this stuff is it's just that's what I try to tell people is you don't have to be smart to do technology. You just have to be precise, and that's the whole deal. Right? Again, it's that whole thing. Like if you forget a comma or if you miss one stupid thing, like nothing works, and you just have to figure out what that thing is. So yeah, cool. Okay, Robbie, any questions or that's it?
That's it. Thanks for all the knowledge.
Yeah, good deal. Okay, oops. So we are now officially at 4 o'clock. So I'm done. I dragged questions out of you folks for 2 hours, and now I get to go and pack for Miami. Get to some real warm weather. I will. Let's see here. What am I doing? Anyways, again, Silicon Dojo, all this stuff is here. So there will be a video. So when I do these sessions, I have a 4K camera sitting right beside the Zoom camera. This will get encoded. This will get uploaded to YouTube tonight or tomorrow. So if you want to go back and watch this and listen to anything, it'll be there. Again, we will continue to have the question and answer sessions, hopefully while I'm in Miami. So every Friday at 2 o'clock we try to do these. Again, one-on-one sessions. We do those every Monday. Again, I'll keep doing those in Miami. We're booked out over a month with those anyway, so it probably doesn't matter as far as Miami is concerned. And then we have these self-study classes if you want to take those. And with that is all I have. And I do have to say, I would just, again, it's the ask. The ask is always important in the technology world. If you do not ask, you do not get. Do remember, free to the end user is not actually free. This crap costs me money. If you find this valuable and you have money, if those two things are true, if you can click on this and throw in some money every month, that would be ever so lovely. And that is all I got to say. So hope this is a good session, and see you all next week.